Hello class. By a show of hands, how many of you have taken a class in which no one participated? No one raised their hand. That's a lot of you. I suspected that. I also have taken a class like that. And unfortunately, I was one of the ones that never participated. If you're wondering, the class that I took was called Physical Geology, and it took place at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I barely raised my hand, I barely asked questions, I barely learned anything from that class. So today, I would like to talk to you guys about the benefits of participating in class, and I would also like to talk to you about the ways in which you can participate in class. So the first benefit I'm going to talk about is better grades. Yes, you can get better grades simply from participating in class. There was a study done by Megan Lang and Harry G. Murray of the University of Western Ontario, in which they conducted a study in this upper division psychology class. It was Psychology 261, so there was a lot of smart students in that class. So this is what they did. 2 trained observers attended each class meeting, and so they sat in the class and they gave each student they gave them a participation rating ranging from 0 to 100. And at the end of the term, they correlated the participation rating with their final exam score. And they found, and here's a quote from that, "This indicated that students who participated more frequently in class did in fact tend to show higher levels of content knowledge and problem solving." So here we see a direct link between class participation and your grade on the final exam. Also, another benefit to participate is that you can get smarter in your brain. There's a study done by Dr. Janet M. Zadina. She has her PhD in neuroscience. She wrote in her book called 6 Weeks to a Brain-Compatible Classroom that, and I did a paper on this. I find her research very interesting. She says this in her book: "In the presence of an enriched environment, your brain continuously grows stronger connections. The more connections you grow, the smarter you become." Now, what connections is she talking about? She's talking about the connections in your brains that connect your neurons together. So according to Janet Zadina, your smartness is based on the number of connections that you have in your brain. I'll give you another example of that. Also in her book, she says, "Working in groups elicits cooperation, which is a state that activates reward pathways in the brain." Yes, I memorized that quote. Yes. I've read her stuff a lot. So working in groups, which is a form of participation. I'm going to get more into that later. So she says working in groups activates reward pathways in your brain. So in other words, that makes your connections connect together in your brain. Here's an example of that. Have you guys ever done math or history or English, or you're doing some homework and it just doesn't make sense? And so you're sitting there, you're just trying to do it and it's not clicking. But then all of a sudden you ask a question or you just study hard and then all of a sudden you get it. Well, that's a perfect example of your brain making new connections. So now we've talked about the benefits of participating, which were better grades and you can get smarter. Now I would like to share with you some of the ways in which you can participate. So the first one is to ask questions, like raise your hand in class, ask questions, talk to your classmates around you. When you ask questions, or here's an example. I took a class 2 semesters ago called Archaeology, Intro to Archaeology. It was a very interesting class. And in the first day of class, when the teacher handed out the syllabus, I read this. He said, "Feel free to ask questions and make statements during class time. I want you to enjoy this experience, and the best way to do so is by participating. If you do not understand something, wish me to expand on a certain point, or simply provide an example, don't hesitate, speak up." So he told us all in class to participate and to step out of our comfort zone and to ask questions. And that kind of stuck with me ever since. So now I remember that, to speak up, to ask questions. I got to be in the class, and it was a good class. So the next one another way to participate is to talk to your classmates. In here we do that a lot. We sit around, we have friends that we sit around, we talk to each other. So yeah, talk to your classmates. Exchange phone numbers with your classmates. Here's another one. Form study groups. Here's an example, another personal example I have about forming a study group. Last semester I took a political science class. It was a tough class, but I got an A in the class, and here's how. Me and two other friends from class, we would study for like 3 to 6 hours the day before the exam, and we got A's and B's on the exams, and we passed. So here's another way you can participate. Take notes, guys. Take notes. Take notes when you're, when the instructor writes something on the board, or in this class puts something on the overhead. Take notes, because later on you can go back, you can read your notes, and you can get a good grade on the exam. Here's the most important one: show up to class. Right here, the most important one. Even if you feel like you're unprepared, you don't have your speech ready, or you don't have your homework, or you just feel unprepared. If you're late, show up to class still, because chances are there's a better chance that you'll pass if you would just show up to class. So, guys, it would make me so happy to know that you guys took this to heart, and that you guys would actually ask more questions in your classes and participate actively, because in doing so you'll get smarter, you'll get better grades, and also it's the logical thing for us to do, because we're already sitting in class. Might as well go to the fullest and just participate, ask questions, form study groups, talk to one another. So today we've talked about the benefits of participating, which are you can get smarter and you can get better grades. We've also talked about the ways in which you can participate. So next time, guys, you find yourself sitting in a class, like whatever the class, math, science, speech 100, English, whatever it is, and you find a question rising up on the inside, do not hesitate. Just raise your hand and ask a question, because you might learn something that you can hold for the rest of your life. Thank you, guys.
DJ, could you raise your hand and share your thoughts?
I thought that was a really solid speech. Like right off the bat, I knew you were clear on what you're going to be talking about, you preview your points, and then as you went through the speech, you seemed very confident. You made a lot of eye contact, which was really good. And I also really appreciated how you worked on what you said you were going to work on, like walking the transitions and stuff. That was really cool. And yeah, just the fact that you didn't depend on your note card so much, and how you even memorized like people's names and quotes was really good. And it was also very appropriate for this classroom. Like you understood your audience, and you understood the audience, and you geared it towards us, and I'm sure everyone in here can identify with it, so it was really good.
All right, well, I'll echo most of DJ's comments. I thought that all of those things were pretty solid. You know how enthusiastic I am about audience surveys as an attention device, but it worked pretty well in this particular context, and I think that the audience responded appropriately, and of course it fits with the topic that you're doing, so that's good. I think that you could use a little bit more research in a couple of spots. I like the study that you had that talked about how people participating in class was related to their grades. I thought that was interesting. I think there's a lot of research on similar kinds of things. At the end, when you're talking about showing up to class, study groups, those kinds of things, it wouldn't surprise me at all that there is good research and material on that shows that those things make a difference. Their personal examples and experiences are great, because that's easy for people to relate to, and we get the narrative that is really helpful on that. Selling it, though, requires a little bit more proof, and I think like I said, on each of those, if you could have gone one extra step with just that extra piece of information, that would make it stronger. It's not bad that what you had. I thought what you had was really good. Just talking about what you could do to make things better. I think the delivery issues are really solid. Like DJ talked about, you are walking the transitions. Your movements seem deliberate and related to what you're talking about. Either you're changing a subject or you're stepping forward to emphasize a point. It's not just random pacing, and I think that that works really well for you. I hope this doesn't sound odd and disparaging. You have an interesting cadence to your voice. You talk in a kind of a deliberate way within a certain kind of range, and I find it kind of interesting, but it's not necessarily an interesting voice to listen to for a long period of time. You make it work pretty well, though. I mean, I think what you do is that you flow very effectively, and that's the way you compensate for those kinds of things. I'm sorry if it sounds personal. I'm not trying to be. If I listen to my own voice, see, I couldn't identify my own voice if I had to. I mean, I'd say I think that's me, but no, most people don't sound to themselves the way they sound to themselves. You know, you hear your voice, you may not recognize those kinds of things. I think the way you work well as a speaker is by flowing smoothly and putting things together well, not necessarily, being high energy and all those kinds of things and using a lot of variety and inflection, but really it's the pacing thing, and I think that you get a lot of use out of that. So I think that works well for you. All right.